Koka Sexton is one of the world's most recognized social selling experts, and here are his 5 steps to thrive in sales.
When you talk about being a resource for your buyer, it begs a few other questions. First of which, you have to understand your buyer. So you need to know what matters to them and understand the things that they're already reading, the things that they're already consuming. So listening is probably the key component to all of this. You have to be able to listen and understand and then kind of pivot off of what your buyers are already spending time consuming and then produce that type of content for them. Moving down the line, when it comes to actually being the resource, I believe one of the pillars or one of the fundamental pieces of my social selling methodology is that content is the fuel for social selling. And so content is much different than collateral. And I define the two differently. Specifically, that collateral is all about, my company. It's my white papers. It's my data sheets. It's my product information. Whereas content shouldn't really fill that gap. Content is the educational piece. It's what drives people to learn new things, to open up their minds and maybe challenge pre-existing beliefs on stuff. That's where I think content matters. And so how do you become a resource for your buyer is that you start finding the right content that starts opening up those lines of conversation, those communications with those decision makers. Sometimes it can be, I'd say, controversial in nature because it is challenging these misconceptions or these, inherent beliefs. But many times it's just adding new insights and teaching these buyers new things. And if you can do that, I say lead with insights. If you can lead with insights into most of these conversations, everybody's going to want to take your next phone call because they're always going to learn something new from that interaction. So I believe that as a salesperson, if we're going to curate content, we have to do it at a larger scale. Right? We have to be able to curate content that touches a wider audience, but still very strategically focused. So, in the example you gave, like you're doing within a specific city or, region that you want to target a specific type of doctor. Now, that being said, you should know a handful of those doctors intimately. You should know exactly what they do throughout the day, what their hours are like, what kind of patients do they see. You should know very specific things about the business. And the only way to do that is by meeting some of these doctors. And so great companies are building campaigns around a specific industry or a specific type of doctor in this example. But it's also the responsibility of that marketing team or, maybe insights from the sales organization to say, here's the individual details that fit within those personas so that as they're curating content, they know exactly who that should be going to. So that's the broad scheme. As sales professionals, we have to know how to then pivot that content and give it and deliver it to a single person in many ways also. But it's a blend. Social selling is about being that resource and sharing this information to a wider audience. But you have to know, and most salespeople already should know how to do this if they're good, how to then structure this really down to a conversation with just one person and why I shared this thing and why it matters to you. Whereas most marketing teams are saying, this is enough. We're giving you the air cover. So when you start having the conversations, you as a sales professional should know how to get granular to that one individual. So it based on, I would guess, engagement. I mean, this is one of the things that the marketing team should already have insights into. The marketing organization should know, they should be able to categorize this stuff at a base level. They should say, this is the evergreen content. This is the stuff that will be challenging, these preconceived notions. And here's the stuff that is really just insightful and adding value. The measurement of that is how is it being adopted? How is it being consumed by your audience? If you put something out there and you build a campaign and nobody's actually interacting with it and liking it and sharing it and commenting on it and adding those other layers, it's falling flat somewhere. And so you need to figure that out. What I find with salespeople, because marketing is again doing this on a very large level, and then they're aggregating data based on their social listening or other platforms they have in place. Or salespeople, they're having these one-to-one conversations with these buyers, and they can say, "Hey, did you see that that latest research report that we sent off to you? It had some really good stuff about your industry and specifically maybe even some of your competitors that were mentioned in this." And you'll have some very honest conversations sometimes. They're like, "Oh yeah, I read that. Like we knew that things like 5 years ago." Oh, interesting. Like they should be making notes of that and then filtering that back up. This is where the sales and marketing alignment happens. It's not just so much marketing aligns with sales, but sales needs to align also and provide those insights back up the chain to say, this stuff is falling flat. We need something that is actually unlocking more insights. What I use, and this is one of the reasons why I work at this company, Hootsuite. I've been a customer of Hootsuite since like 2009. So I've been using this platform forever. And now I just have this opportunity to work with them. But that's how I use the platform. So I have specific streams set up in my dashboard. One for, identifying new content based on keywords or RSS feeds that I have set in place. But in many cases, what I'll also do is I will take the link for the landing page for a piece of research that the company is producing, and I'll run a search within Twitter just for that link. And as you'll start seeing people sharing this, and then you start identifying who are these individuals? Do they fit my buyer persona? If so, am I connected to them? Yes or no? If no, yes, I should connect with them. If I am connected with them, thank them for sharing it. And I think this is just all the best practices that salespeople can do within a social network very quickly. Like it's not going to take a large amount of time for them to run this search and then say, oh, here's a bunch of people. Let me like that, reshare that, thank them for sharing it. And then they move on about their day job. When I talk to sales organizations, from the digital natives to what I call the non-digital natives, the baby boomers, the people who have been in sales for 30 plus years, and I explain to them this idea of tracking hashtags and how that matters and why you should be looking at these conversations. It makes a huge difference in how they start engaging. And I say, they're like, well, what if it seems weird that somebody posts something and then I leave a comment or I try and connect with them based on it? It's like, they're putting it out there for a reason. People are on social to be social. And if they're sharing this content, why do you share it? You want to see that engagement. When I share things, I like to see the engagement. It's universal. That's why they're putting that piece out there. The best thing you can do, the nicest thing you can do, is actually engage with it. And by doing that, you start building social capital with those individuals. And if you build enough social capital over time, you can then make your withdrawal by asking for their time, trying to sell them something, whatever that may be. You have to build that social capital, and that is the best way to do it, by engaging with these individuals and the content they're sharing.